Hello, and welcome to Something Salty, Something Sweet, where we will be discussing book titles. The good, the bad, the pretentious. Mostly the pretentious. But anyway, I have very strong feelings about book titles, and some of it is because I work in a library. So, for example, I hate when authors give their titles or their books a one-word title. Like It is the most egregious. It by Stephen King. Who names their book a pronoun? It would be like if you named your book She, and here's why it's annoying. You're looking for it in your really bad software that your library has, and it will find every single book with She in the title, or It in the title, or whatever. Whereas if you just named it a phrase, people could find that. Why isn't it called Pennywise? That seems like such a better title to me. Pennywise. I think it would be better, but that's neither here nor there. That's just my own little personal pet peeve. I don't like when books have a single word title. It's difficult to find. Plus, when people get it wrong, like there's often times where I don't know, people who don't work at a library or bookstore probably don't know this, but people will often come up and give you a completely erroneous title that does not exist, and you have to try and figure out what they mean. And if it's a phrase, you can usually be like, oh, okay, like, and then you're like, is this what you mean? And they'll be like, oh yeah. But if it's just one word, sometimes it's really difficult if they get it wrong. You're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah. So that's annoying. But then there's other things like really pretentious titles or titles where it's like a trend and it needs to stop. Like the first example of the first person to do that, it would be fine, but then a bunch of other people do it and it's really dumb. Like the death and life of. So for example, we have, where are we? The death and life of the great American cities, the death and life of the Great Lakes, the death and life of Superman, the death and life of Great American School System, the death and life of Ada Hernandez. And I'm pretty sure that there's more. Like, I'm pretty sure that there's many more out there. And again, the first guy, I don't know which book was first, but let's say it's like the death and life of the Great Lakes. I'm like, okay, that's interesting. Why would you phrase it that way? And then a million other people do the same title, and I'm like, really? You can't all have something that, or this is my own personal pet peeve, the beekeeper's wife, or the time traveler's wife, or the bone collector's daughter, or zookeeper's wife, I guess, not beekeeper. It's probably the beekeeper's daughter. There probably is a thing. I don't know why it bothers me so much, but like the ex's wife or daughter it just rubs me the wrong way. I just don't care for that trend, and it's such a, not anymore. I think those ones are dying down, but there were so many books that had that kind of a thing. Like really cool job titles, wife. And I'm like, really? Okay. Yeah. And let's see, any others? Oh gosh, this is the worst one. It's nonfiction books. And it's always, it's like you put a swear word on the cover, like the F word or something, but you put a little asterisk in place of the U or whatever vowel you have. And again, I'm like, are you trying to be edgy? Like, I think when, like, Go the F to Sleep came out, like, that was kind of funny. Again, because it's also, like, a play on a kid's book. But then a bunch of different books started having that, like The Life-Saving Magic of Not Giving a Bleep, and there's many self-help books that have it, and comedy books that have it, and I'm like, are you trying to be edgy? Because it's not edgy anymore. It's been done at least a dozen times, so, like, go full edge and just put the word on the cover with no asterisks. I dare you. But yeah, no, it's just, it's so annoying because I'm like, we all know what you're doing. You're swearing on a book cover. Why are you pretending not to? Like, this isn't clever. But the worst trend is blank of blank and blank, and you all know what I mean. It's this. Let me give you an example. You can actually find a list on Goodreads of 106 examples of this. Oh boy. I'm going to try not to read any from the same series. I'm going to try to only do singletons. So, let's see. We have Daughter of Smoke and Bone, Court of Thorns and Roses, The Forest of Hands and Teeth, An Alchemy of Masks and Mirrors. I don't even know what that one. Night of Cake and Puppets, Queen of Air and Darkness, The Ballad of Songbird and Snakes, Women of Sand and Myrrh, Gods of Jade and Shadow, Daughter of Sand and Stone, Song of Blood and Stone, Girls of Paper and Fire, Books of Laughter and Forgetting, A Heart of Blood and Ashes, Girls of Maiden, that one actually doesn't count. Children of Blood and Bone, Shades of Milk and Honey, A Song of Wraiths and Ruin, The Girls of Fire and Thorns, Prisoners of Night and Fog, Map of Salt and Stars, Gates of Thread and Stone. I think you get the idea. Holy moly. I think it all started with A Song of Ice and Fire, which I also hate because all those series are like, A Song of Ice and Fire, A Storm of Swords, and I'm like, are there multiple Storms of Swords? Are there multiple Songs of Ice and Fire? Just use my friend. But all those other ones are YA, and that trend needs to die. It needs to go away. Not only because it's just which is which. At a certain point, I'm like, how can you even tell which one's which? And secondly, they're so 3 edgy, 5 me. It's like blood and ashes and fire and smoke and bone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like really? Every time they all have to be the most dramatic nouns you can think of. It just seems so pretentious to me. I don't know. I was even talking with my sister because my books are very comedy fantasy. They're not serious. I mean, they're a little serious, but not really. And I made up pretentious YA titles for them. Like, what is it? It was like a Queen of Masks and Chaos, People or Children of Smoke and Shadow, and City of Light and Ashes. And I'm like, those are all actually accurate descriptions of my books, but they totally don't fit the tone. Like, they're so overwrought and ridiculous, and I just find and I know those books are more serious, the ones I read from that list, the first 20 or so of the 106, but it's like, do you see why it bothers me, that trend of not only, because it signifies what the books are about. It signifies, like, we're so serious. Oh my goodness. And it's like, really, are you? Because like an actually serious book, like Lord of the Rings, okay? Lord of the Rings is about the end of, lots of stuff. The elves are going away. There's a war. There's lots of death. But they're not called, like, anything nonsensical and pretentious. They're just called Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King. Bam. There. Don't got nothing to prove. That's the thing. A really serious book doesn't really have anything to prove. So it doesn't need an overwrought title. Whereas a book that maybe is trying a little too hard, maybe has a little bit of a title. I don't know. I just think it and again, the first one that did that, like, I don't know. I mean, obviously, A Song of Ice and Fire. I would say amongst the first ones to do it were probably Court of Thorns and Roses, maybe? That seems to be very early on. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting naming scheme. And then the other books in her series have similar names. I'm like, that's fine. I like when names match in a series. But then literally dozens of other YA books copied the trend. And it's like, oh my gosh, why? It just irks me. I can't even describe why it bothers me so much. But yeah. Now, since I've already gone that way, let's describe another thing that I hate. Even more than that trend, even more, is when titles don't match. Now, you don't have to match. For example, like I just said, like, these don't really match per se. They're all different naming schemes. But if you're going to have a naming scheme, it should match. Here's a good example. A good example of a naming scheme in a series. I've never read this series, but I know about it. There's matched, crossed, reached. Oh, good. They're all like past tense verbs / adjectives. Here's a bad example. This is the Trill trilogy, which if I hadn't dumped all the knowledge of the first book from my brain after reading it, because it was horrible, I would probably rant about. Switched, torn, ascend. Which, it's like nails on a chalkboard. Ascend. And I'm like, switched and torn are adjectives. Why not ascendant? That is also an adjective. Why would you call it ascend? I don't know. I mean, like, I know I sound like I'm the same person, but it bothers me so much. It would be like if you had, it's like when the covers don't match in a trilogy, and not like even the edition, because it's a title, it's the official title of that book. It's like you have 2 books, and then you have a 3rd one, and it's never going to match. It is never going to match, and I hate it so much. Another one that kind of irks me, not as much because I don't think they were necessarily trying to match, but they could have if they wanted to, is Twilight. They have Twilight, which is a time of day, New Moon, which is a time of month, Eclipse, which is a rare occurrence, and Breaking Dawn, which is also a time of day. So Twilight and Breaking Dawn match, but the middle 2 don't. And I'm like, why not just call it Twilight, Dusk, Midnight, Dawn? Because then it would all be times of day, and you have that, like, descent into darkness and then light, which is probably what she was going for. I don't know. I never read most of that series, only the first one, which was also awful. But yeah, like, I feel like if you can have titles match, you should. I worked very, very diligently for mine. I have miscast spells, outcast shadows, recast light. Because you cast spells, cast shadows, and you cast light. Hey, but you also have things that are miscast and recast and outcast. Yeah. The thing. I tried really hard. So yeah, I like when titles match. And even if you can't match... Oh, hello, kitty cat. Sorry. Even if you can't match the scheme, you should match the tone. Like, for example, here's the #1 Ladies Detective Agency, and none of them really match. But they're all very cute. So you know, you have some normal ones, like the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. Here's a giraffe. And then you have, I don't know, like little cute phrases, like morality for beautiful girls, or in the company of cheerful ladies, and tea time for the traditionally built. And they're kind of just like cute little phrases. And I don't know, I like that. None of them match too much, but they match in tone. And that's a good thing as well. I actually realized Hunger Games I actually like, because they have Hunger Games, Catching Fire, and Mockingjay. So they don't match, but they all have 3 syllables, which I like. And I know by this time I sound like a complete like maniac for caring about any of this, but I don't know. I just like when a series is like, matches, yay. Yeah, so, yeah. I also like in mystery series when they have the same word in the title. Like, obviously, a lot of them have death in the title, but some of them will have cake if they're cake mysteries, or antiques if they're antique mysteries, because this is how mystery series are. The Cat Who, that's a whole series. The Cat Who Did X. I like it. I wish that more series would try to have a pattern to make them all match. So that's my weird title. Oh, bonus edition at the very end of the video. Not books, but movies. I'm sick and tired of Pixar, Disney's one-word titles. Like Tangled, Frozen, Up, Coco, Moana, Lightyear. They just need to stop. They just need to have multiple words in their titles. There's more than that, but yeah. I have very strong feelings about titles, and I don't really know why. But that's all for now. Something salty, something sweet. So yeah, the good, the bad, the pretentious. Mostly the pretentious. Anyway, ta-ta, next time. This will be the last... Will it be? This is probably going to be the last video of the year until New Year's, when I'll talk about all my schemes for New Year and weird goals and pie in the sky, overly ambitious plans. So see you then. Ta-ta.